This is pretty crazy for me. Um,
I know I want to ask you.
yeah,
It's your second time to see it. How was
sure.
it this time?
Oh, it's even better.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Yeah. I don't think you all realize what it means to make your first film. I'm sure there's a lot of filmmakers here, people that are involved in film, but it's kind of an extraordinary kind of thing. And this year, Dan and I were at the festival. We were at the festival at Lyon. And I want to read to you something that was written on the wall
Love it.
uh, in the museum there. The Lumiere brothers were a little like children. What could be more genuine than the first images? Those are images you can trust. No manipulation, no contamination, just the wonder of being able to create them. That's a bit of what it's like to recapture this sense of wonder. I'd like us to try and remember those first moments. Wim Wenders.
That's great. I want that. I want that copy.
I don't know, it really meant a lot to me because we've worked together so long.
Oh, yeah. It's great.
And I'm so proud of you
Oh,
to make
thank
this
you,
film.
Bruce.
And I do know the courage that it takes to do it. And especially on the subject. You and I have worked with this subject a lot in our work. You've done a lot of books for me. You've helped me with exhibitions, so many things. And I think that you chose the most perfect person to make this film on, you know? So let's give him a big hand, please.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you. And I was so happy he said yes, he'd be in the film. I was sweating it for a while.
Well, it was funny. He came up to our house in Montauk, and he was borrowing some of our collection of George Platt Lynes. And Sam goes, "Wait, there's another one." And I went, "Oh my God, I forgot about that one." He's always looking. He has a really wondrous eye. I think that one of the questions that I wanted to ask you about this film is that it comes at a very timely moment.
Yeah.
There's so much persecution for all kinds of people and kinds of things going on. And I think that we don't realize that the persecution of gay people is as strong as ever. It's very hidden. It's hidden in the way we work. It's hidden in the acceptance of it. Sometimes people were afraid, like, to look at pictures that we worked on together.
Right, I know.
And people didn't even seem really interested in it because of the subjects. And I think that you chose a great, great photographer, great artist, who really just put his life out there. Mm-hmm. And he had a big life. A painter asked me the other day, how can I be an artist? And I said, well, it's something that nobody can answer. But one thing I can tell you is have a big life.
Yes. It's so interesting what Bruce is talking about because we've been in several festivals across the country. And the interesting thing, right after the film ends and the Q&A happens, I had so many people come up to me and says, "I've never heard of this man. Why haven't I?" Mm-hmm. And that's what made me want to do this film from the beginning. It took us over 10 years to make this film, and my team is here tonight, Matt and John and Nando in the back there. If it wasn't for them, this film would not have been on the screen right now. But it was really interesting. It happened at every festival. We were like 14 festivals, 15, whatever it is. But everyone, I was amazed by that. They'd come up to me and say, "I've never heard of this man. Why haven't I?" So when we started the project in 2011, I designed a book, The Male Nudes of George Platt Lynes. Rizzola's asked me if I would do this book. I said, yes, I would love to. I only knew a few of his images. I knew his name. I didn't know his life. And 2 years later, we began the project. I said, I want to do a documentary. It was told to me by the foundation that there's no footage of him. I said, I don't care. But at the end of the film, you see there's that 9 seconds of George and Christopher Isherwood. And what's amazing about that is that I forgot when, quite a few years ago, when we interviewed Don Bacardi, he told us about Christopher and he coming to New York, and there was this piece of film on George. We said, you got to be kidding me. We said, oh, my God. So we started trying to find it, and we heard that all the work of Christopher Isherwood has been donated, given to the Huntington Library in L.A., and we asked them to please check, and they went through there, but they couldn't find any footage of George, or couldn't find any footage, basically. So one night, after the film was finished, and it was last a year before, and I woke up in January, the beginning of the year, and I remember the film Chris and Don. And in that film, it's their life, but there were a lot of home movies that Christopher had done. It was in that film. I went to the office and I said to Matt, this film, we got to find out who did it. And Matt looked it up. We found the couple who directed that film, and we got a hold of her. And she said she didn't know she still had the hard drive, but she did see something. And we said, oh my God, please, please. And so months went by, we didn't hear anything from her. So I wrote her, sent her an email saying, any luck? And she said she hadn't had time. And then out of nowhere, a few weeks later, she sent me an email with this footage. But I wouldn't open it. I was too afraid it was not going to be any good. So I said to Matt, I'm sending it over to you. Wait till I get there. We'll sit together and go through this thing. We thought we won the lottery. We were screaming, and, like, oh my God. And Matt kept saying, it doesn't seem real. Look at it again. There it was. So it was really great that we found it. But that's the only thing that exists of him. But
Sam, maybe tell everybody here what it was like to go to Fred Koh's place, Frederick, and look at all the photographs, because it's so interesting, really.
It was amazing. We went up there. Fred Koch, I don't know if you know that, he would never allow anyone to see the work. He had the biggest homoerotic collection, and we've always heard about it, and he would not allow it. He passed away. Lucky enough, John, in my office, John McConnell back there, he does illustration, drawing, painting, and he painted the guy who's the executor of the estate, John Olson, who's in the film. He did a drawing of his friend, and it came up, Platt Lynes. So this guy supposedly worked with me at the gym at one time. I didn't remember. He allowed us to come up there and to see the collection. And it's in Butler, Pennsylvania. And if you've ever been there, it's very depressing, basically, except this huge castle sits there. And in the collection, John was really sweet and very nice, and we got to go through it for 3 days, and then we went back again and again, and we found images that I'd already seen all the Kinsey collection. And because I did that book that was all about Kinsey's work, collection. So we couldn't believe what we found there. It was amazing. And there's still so much that you've never seen and never been published, which I would love to do a book on eventually. But anyway, it was great being there. And they were very nice, and John was. And there's a woman there that cooked, said the food was fantastic. And we went there for 3 days, and then we came back to New York, and then we went back again. And at the very end, we thought we were through. We were exhausted. But then he said, oh, by the way, let me show you this. And he opens this cabinet, and there were the neckages that, and it was work we'd never seen. And, we spent another 4 or 5 hours looking at it. One of the great things we found in that collection was his party scenes. No one has any photographs of it. You see Deanna Reeland, that black and white in there, spliced in there and all. There was a contact sheet we discovered there. So I said, oh my God, here's a party he threw. And someone photographed it. That was just great. We kept learning as we went along. It wasn't all there at the beginning.
When I first met Frederick Koch, he was brought up to our loft. And he was, I'd heard a lot about him, and he was kind of intimidating. And yet, right before me was a very, very shy man, very elegantly dressed. And almost kind of frightened of life. You could tell that he didn't have many friends, and his friends were really photographs.
Oh.
And he lived through his photographs. And I thought it was so amazing the way that you structured this film, that you start feeling that it is something that happens to people in the creative arts.
Yes.
That creation, that creative part becomes like their life force. But he was a character. He would sit across the table. You'd have to show him about 100 prints. And I said, oh, man, what am I going to talk to this guy about? And I said to Howard Reed from the Robert Milley Gallery, I said, this is going to be so weird. So I showed him a picture of a dog. And Howard was kicking me under the table.
Because he didn't want to see the dog.
Dogs. And then I said, well, I have this really nice landscape. They go, no landscapes. I said, okay. He said, well, here's a picture of a guy. And he goes, who is this guy? Well, luckily I knew his name, as I most of the time do. I said, he says, what does he do? And I said, well, he's a student. He's a really great athlete. And he's our pool cleaner. He said, that's really interesting. Well, I'd really like to meet him someday.
Oh, God. It was really interesting. Their life was all on paper. They wrote letters to each other. And so when the COVID happened, the lockdown, I was able to get like 300 letters that he had written, Bernard Perlin and Paul Capps, all these people. So I spent that summer out here actually reading those letters. And it's amazing. I would love to have some of those letters published. And if you ever read that fully, that letter that Monroe Wheeler wrote him, you only see pieces of it here. It's unbelievable. I wish somebody had written me a letter like that in my life. But it's just really amazing. And but he was a beautiful writer, and he wanted to be a poet, which I thought was interesting at one time. But he spoke about the models he would photograph, and it was really fascinating.
Working with you all these years was very much for me like the way that the Pajama series pictures were. It was our philosophy and the way we saw things. Mm-hmm. We saw life and beauty and all that kind of stuff. And it was funny that when we got to work with Paul Cadmus once, I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, Banana Republic.
Yeah, and we had to choose a lady to be with him.
Cece Guest.
Yeah, and so we had Cece Guest and Paul Cadmus together. And I said to Paul, I go, Paul, I have so many photographs of you by George Platt Lynes, but they're all taken from behind. And he said, George just never liked me frontal.
It's so funny you said that. If you look at Bernard Perlin, he didn't really like him in the front either. He always sort of turned his face a little bit. I noticed that. He did. And then also, but I think it was really great. The one person get interviews for these people was not so easy. A lot of them said, no, I don't want to do it, or they weren't well, or what it was, and to schedule them. But the one person I wish we had gotten is Dougie, the woman that he had an affair with and he loved her as a model. We were on our way, and she had died before we got there. But I really, that was the one person I was looking forward to seeing and see her side.
I'm gonna tell everybody something about you because he's quite shy. When you work on a book with him, he doesn't want to put his name in it. It's so tiny. And Nan keeps saying, you've got to make your name a little bit bigger. And he goes, no. This book isn't mine, it's yours. And, or it's our collaboration together. And so I'm so happy that you have your name on this film. And that's a big step for him. Also, I think there's one other thing I wanted to tell you about him. When I first knew Sam, he was very involved with the ICP.
Yeah.
And with Cornell Kappa. And you were there all the time. And you were
every
always
lecture class
giving time and money and everything to young photographers so that they could continue to buy film. And, I really loved that about you.
Thank you. I do too. Should we ask any questions?
Yeah, sure.
Dennis, good to see you.
You.
Hi, Dennis.
I have a question. What is the fate of that collection of Frederick Koch's?
What was that?
What is the fate of that collection? I mean, it sounds, well, it's disturbing that it seems to be locked away in Butler, Pennsylvania.
It is.
And is there...
Yes, we're working on something right now, trying to get it, but I can't really talk about it so much because it's such a legal situation.
Yeah,
We're
I'm sure.
We don't own it, no.
Yeah.
But we want something to happen to it. We want,
I hope so.
And there are a couple of people, major museums that would love
course.
to feature the work and show it. But to go through them, it's not so easy,
Yeah, well, that's criminal, but hopefully you'll get there.
Me too. Because I do want to publish eventually the photographs you've never seen of George's, and they're unbelievable. Not that these are not unbelievable, but they're just more.
But are they in that collection?
Yes. What you see in this film, I would say most of it's from Kinsey.
Right.
But there's Coke in there too, but not. I just couldn't dwell on some of the stuff. I've seen every photograph he owns.
Yeah.
Went through it.
From that collection.
Yeah, so I know it's there. Yeah.
So, thank you. So I noticed the interviews with the gentleman Bernard who died in 2014. So obviously you took those while he was alive. So how long was this film being shot that you intended it to ultimately be the film that it is? Like how long?
It took us 10 years.
There you go.
We designed the book, came to me in 2011, and then it was 2 years later we started the film. It took us a while to pull it together and figure out how to do it. What's really great is I have to tell you, my team, Matt loves photography, so I said, Matt, you're going to be the cinematographer. John says, okay, he's going to be doing lighting and sound. So we all learned together, and Dad took care of the production and everything else. And being all of us together every day, it was like another client, basically. But we were always working together and talking about, But it took 10 years.
I was struck by the fact that he was compelled to make his art despite knowing that it wouldn't see the light of day. But I'm wondering, given that he did donate it to Kinsey, he did donate, give it to Bernard. Did you ever find in all your research whether he had any directions besides don't open that box as to when he imagined the world would have caught up with these images to be shared?
The letters between he and Kinsey, and he was worried about one thing, that Kinsey, he said, I know you well. You'll keep it hidden, and I don't want that to happen. So he said, and they did. For a while, that was never seen. He was put in freezers, they call it, whatever. And then I think, Bruce, you got there was a book that did come out from Kinsey. I think you wrote the introduction to it. And Dimitri designed it, and there were some images there. And it was the first time they sort of released some of his work, but they kept it hidden for quite a while, and he was worried about that. So, and then Kinsey wrote it back and said, don't worry, I promise you, we will share it with the world. But he was concerned about it. And I think what's really great is that he wasn't selfish. He had this work, and thank God he thought about finding a place to save it, because he knew that, none of it was ever published except once in a German publication, and that there were 4 or 5 images of his, but he didn't use his name. It was Roberto Rolf. And they appeared there, like 4 or 5, and that was the only time ever in his lifetime, but he couldn't use his name. But he was concerned about that. Yeah.
The film begins so beautifully with these mesmerizingly beautiful portraits of the person the film's about. And just wonder how those portraits, when he was so young, were taken. Are they all self-portraits?
Of himself, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't really know, to be honest with you. I don't know the answer to that. There's been conversations about it. You know, did Monroe take it? You know, or did Glenway did not, I don't think, but Monroe, supposedly at times they said Monroe took some of the photographs of him. But Cecil Beaton, and interesting enough, a lot of the images of George in his out uniform and all this stuff is by Cecil Beaton. And they actually lived together at one point. I didn't know that till later. Yeah.
Because I was going to ask you the influence of Beaton. I can't tell if the chicken and the egg.
Right. There's an image there that he did. A man is in it, and Beaton did the same exact image with a woman's in it. And that thing came later. But they did live together.
I have sort of a selfish question since I'm from Englewood, New Jersey. Could you talk a little bit about, he was born there, he lived there, more of his life in Englewood? Because I was shocked.
Oh, you were?
I thought it was going to be, Bayonne, then it's Englewood, which is a very fancy town.
I know. We went there. We saw the church. His father's photograph on the wall there in the vestibule.
Home of John Travolta.
Ah. That's interesting. But he grew up there as far as I know.
It was a beautiful town.
Yeah. But as far as I know, he had a bookstore there. And then I don't know. I just know that he lived there. That's all I know. I don't know much about where he was actually born there or not. I mean, I think he was.
Oh, okay.
In a former lifetime, I went to SVA and School of Visual Arts, and Mapplethorpe and Dwayne Michaels were teachers. And of course, George was never mentioned, when I went to school there at all. And so I'm just wondering, in all your research, was there any indication that George influenced Mapplethorpe's work?
No. Oh, wait, what am I talking about? George died, and then Mapplethorpe and Sam Wagstaff went to see Bernard Perlin. They wanted to see the collection. Right. And I heard later, a guy who wrote the book about Sam and Robert, and they chose like 10 or 15 photographs, and they said, we'll be back to pick them up. They never came back. But it was told to us, a member of the foundation said, he knew of him maybe, but he didn't influenced by him or anything else. So I asked the question, did they own any of it? And I was told by one of the directors of the Mapplethorpe Foundation, no, we don't own any of it. We found out they did, because the Getty Museum did a big show, and there's donated by Sam Wagstaff, the Platt Lynes images. And I heard that Robert had images or books or something, images, I think it was, and when they cleaned up after he died, they found them there. But they never came back. But one of the things I heard is Sam Wagstaff had an affair with his last boyfriend, Chuck Howard. So he wanted to see how he photographed Chuck Howard. That's what we heard. And there's albums that we saw there, unbelievable, of Chuck Howard and George. They're incredible. But it's sad to say that Chuck Howard was still living. We did the film, but he would not let us speak to him. And he never spoke of George once he left him. Never. And John Cagagno worked with him at Anne Klein. And Chuck Howard was a fashion designer. But he never, ever spoke about George. And John was shocked when I had told him about it. He never spoke about it. But they did know George's work, and they wanted to buy it. And Bernard was upset because he got into a lot of trouble, and he put him aside, for them to come back and pick him up, but they never came back. You have any questions, Bruce?
I sort of started talking about this, about making your first film, and what do you remember the most? What do you remember the most about it? About making it, and also about putting it out in the world, which is really like sending your kid to college. So
Tell me about it. me think about this. I was excited to do this film because I love the man's work. And when I did this book called The Male Nude, I couldn't, and I remember giving you the book, and you said to me, "Oh, the incredible image! I've never seen them before," and I got really excited about it because I thought he deserved to be known out there. I loved his work. I was very selfish about it. I said, "I want to do this book," The thing that surprised me as we went along, we kept learning more and more about him. In his life, and at that time, how difficult it was to be an artist with a gay, a photographer and all. But I just felt like, and then of course finding that piece of film at the end was really mind-blowing because we didn't think we'd ever find it. We didn't know it ever really existed. We thought Don is much older now, and I don't think we thought he didn't remember or he lost it or something, So that was great. But learning about George and that circle was amazing to me at that time. And they were very influential, very powerful as artists at that time in the 30s and 40s. I think what sort of upset me when I get to festivals at all is that the one festival I thought should have taken it did not, and it's Tribeca. This is a New York film, and they did not take it.
Well, I think, when you apply for your film at Tribeca, they ask you, are you gay? Are you bisexual? They ask you all these things.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, recently, yeah. And yes, definitely. And
And they say you can't work, you can't be in the thing if you.
well, they want to take like one transgender person, one gay person, one. And I thought that was pretty horrific. Yes. Yes. And also too is that in film festivals, early on, at least when I started going, Sam, it was pretty traumatic, the way that people treated you. I made this film, and our first film was called Broken Noses, and it was about boxers.
I love that.
And they said to me, isn't that terrible that these kids are boxing with their shirts off? And I'm like, what are you talking about? What would you expect them to wear, And, but, I think that I look at this film and I go, wow, I think a lot of photographers were kind of frightened of him and a little bit jealous of him because he was really good.
He was good.
So,
It's so funny when you ask me about the fear of putting a film out there. I remember we entered the festivals right at the beginning, and matter of fact, O.B. Kelly's here. He's the executive producer of it, and he found us an agent to represent us. And I remember coming to the office one day, and we entered the first 4 or 5 major festivals, and they didn't accept us. And I said to Matt, I just wish one person would accept us, because then I thought, okay, we got a film that's not going to make it, And then next day, I got a text, from Matt. Thank God, Sarasota accepted us, and then Palm Beach right behind it. And I said, "Oh my God, just keep it coming," It was great. It was
and
great.
you went to the place that your family's from.
I had to tell this. I told Bruce, we entered a festival in Beirut, and it was a gay film festival there, but they didn't accept us, and I think they folded, what's going on there now. Then there's one called Independent International Film Festival in Beirut. Matt, with the computer, we're looking because you go to a freeway or whatever that company is. And so we went there to look to see about another festival. We got into it. And all of a sudden, the confetti's flying on the screen. And we got into the Beirut International Film Festival, Independent Film Festival. And I want to tell you, I'm Lebanese. I've never been there in my whole life. I wanted to go there so badly with my sister and I. And so anyway, when she passed away, at the memorial, I said at the memorial that I promised her that I would plant a tree there in Beirut. I didn't know if I could really do it, but I said it, And so, and then we got accepted. I said, oh my God, we're going. The whole team, we're all going there. So we showed the festival, the film at the festival on a Saturday. And anyway, Sunday, I planted a tree in honor of my sister there at the Cedar Forest there that morning. And that evening, they announced that we won the best international feature. So I had to tell you, I really think she did it for me. She got me there, and she said, okay, brother, you better live up to what you promised. And she promised me that I got honored that night.
This theater was